Well, this just feels right, doesn't it? Thursday night, watching some football. Yes, it's college football, but that's okay. Thursday nights are made for football, so it is a wonderful time of year. It's August 31st, but for most of you as you're listening, it's September 1st or September something, and it's a big draft weekend coming up. And my gosh, is Cooper Kupp out of the first round now? I just did fantasy football today in 5 with Chris Towers, and he has him 25th overall, so we'll find out where Jamie and Heath have Cooper Kupp as he had a setback with his hamstring injury. And I think Sean McVay flipped the meaning of the word day and week when he described the injury. So we'll talk about that in a moment. We welcome you to this edition here. We have an email about J.K. Dobbins. Jamie, I hope you're ready to answer that one.
Sure.
We got your exes coming on the show today. And by that, I mean tweets. And let's get to it. Cooper Kupp. Day to day after a setback with his hamstring injury, and I was making a joke that it's probably more like week to week, but who knows? All right, is he a first-round pick? Is he a second-round pick? Heath, what do you think about Cooper Kupp and this setback?
It's definitely a second-round pick in half PPR. Full PPR, I'm still kind of right on the fence. I mean, it's tough because it's Thursday night. I know people have to make decisions on Thursday night. Hopefully, we'll get a little more information in the next 24 hours before the biggest draft weekend of the year happens. But listen, I'd already downgraded him a little bit. I think it's important to acknowledge that when fully healthy, he projects for more fantasy points than any other wide receiver. What he's done the last year and a half when he's been healthy has been like 10 to 15% better than any other wide receiver. So I was already downgraded him for risk a little bit, but 1-2 turn is where I'm at right now.
Is that behind Stephon Diggs? Like which receivers in play? Okay, Diggs.
I already had him behind Tyreek. Diggs is the only other receiver that I moved him behind.
Okay. Barkley. Oh, probably had him behind Barkley. Bijan. Any other running backs? Pollard.
Behind Barkley, behind Bijan, and behind Kelsey.
Okay. All right, Jamie. How about you?
The 2-3 turn. Like I'm concerned. I mean, it's not just that this is the second recurrence of this injury. This is a 30-year-old receiver. This is a quarterback with, some health issues, and soft tissue injuries can be a problem all year long. So you might be in a great situation if you draft Justin Jefferson and there's Cooper Kupp sitting there when you come back. I think that's worth the gamble, but I can't take him in the first round by any stretch. And for me, it's going to be like, I'm concerned about Devontae Adams. It's the same thing, aging receiver that, now has an issue. And so he's going to be behind, for me, behind Adams, behind Jalen Waddle, and in the same range as like Devontae Smith and Chris Olave. Like that's where he is.
Yeah, that's what Chris said. Chris said he had him behind Smith, Olave, and Higgins.
I probably will keep him ahead of Higgins, but behind Smith and Olave, yeah.
That's what I said. I said Higgins, the last 2 years, if you look at Higgins when he's been on the field with Jamar Chase, 2021, Higgins was something right around 15 fantasy points per game, or maybe it was right around wide receiver 15. And then last year, in the games he played with a healthy Chase and his healthy games, Higgins' healthy games, he actually averaged about the same exact amount of fantasy points. So it does feel like, as much as we like Higgins, to me, it feels like he's got a little bit of a ceiling there. Kupp's ceiling is most valuable player in fantasy.
I actually have Higgins behind Ridley at this point.
You do now?
Yeah.
Heath, how about you? Have Ridley or Higgins?
No, I'm still above Ridley. It's because of what you just said. Like his ceiling is still the most valuable player in fantasy.
No, I meant Higgins or Ridley.
Higgins or Ridley? I've got Higgins ahead of Ridley.
Okay. So look, it's Heath and Jamie told you what they think. I told you what Chris thinks. I wish we had more information.
Where are you drafting? Well, I mean, he said we're going to get more information tomorrow. I don't think we're getting more information tomorrow. Sean McVay basically laid it out for you.
And Sean McVay, didn't he say something like, we don't want him to just come back. We want him to come back and be healthy.
Yeah.
Be effective. Where am I?
Which is what you want to hear. You would rather him miss 2 games. If he misses 2 games and then he's Cooper Kupp from the last 2 years for 15 weeks, he was worth a first-round pick. If he's there week 1 and then he gets dinged and then he misses partial time and then he's never Cooper Kupp, that's not what you want.
Yeah. He's about, over the last 2 years, the games he's played with Matthew Stafford, he's over 25 fantasy points per game, or right around there. And that's what Jefferson last year, I think, was about 22 to 23. And he's just so much better. What I said, I had him middle of round 2 is my gut reaction. after Garrett Wilson, like basically the same as Waddle. So in between the two of you,
it's just entirely.
Right.
It's not a math equation. It's not a value equation. It's a risk reward equation, because nobody's going to make the argument that Garrett Wilson, or CeeDee Lamb or Devontae Adams or AJ Brown, like those guys don't have Cooper Kupp ceiling, and nobody would make the argument they do. Right. They're just all a lot safer, and you have to decide: are you drafting based on the upside or based on the floor?
All right, there you go. Different opinions, but not all that different on Cooper Kupp. Yeah. Let's see. How about the Rams, by the way, without Kupp? Okay, so Tyler Higbee, Van Jefferson, Puka Nacua. Jamie, are you feeling anyone now? Any boosts here?
No, just because we don't know how long Kupp is going to be out, so I don't want to overreact to, like, Van Jefferson's like my 61st wide receiver. Puka is like 65, 70, not far behind him. It's like, this is bad. They're just, this was for the most part, a one-man show, and there's going to be opportunities, clearly. Van Jefferson had some good moments in 2021 when Matthew Stafford was healthy. You've heard nothing but positive things about Puka this training camp, this offseason, since they drafted him. Higbee obviously is going to get targets, and you still put him in the borderline top 12 tight end range. But I mean, this is just bad. Like, it makes me want to stay further away from Cam Akers, because they're not going to score very much. Again, hopefully, like Keith said, it's 2 weeks. He heals up and he's back to being Cooper Kupp. But if this lingers and he comes back, plays a couple of games, not right, shuts it down for a few weeks, soft tissue injuries linger, man. It's tough.
We had that Matthew Stafford having a tough time connecting with his teammates story that came out. Yeah. Like, I will say, the one guy he's not having a hard time connecting with is Tyler Higbee. Those guys are on the same page. And so I do think if Kupp is out for week 1, this strengthens the idea of Tyler Higbee as a guy you draft to start week 1 with one of those rookie tight ends. And then if one of the rookie tight ends is actually as involved as all the training camp reports say, then maybe you can start them over Higbee in week 2. But I'd feel okay about starting Higbee week 1 if there's no Kupp.
So earlier this evening, I asked Jamie if we were still good for an 8:30 start time, and he said yes. And Heath replied with this gif here of Mr. Mackey going, okay. As Jamie was sitting there saying, this is bad. This is bad. I was just thinking, Rams are bad. Okay.
I just keep going back to, we did a Superflex draft this afternoon, and at the end of it, Joel Cox, who's one of our executives at CBS, he typed in the chat room, just stay healthy, Matthew Stafford. Just stay healthy, Matthew Stafford. Just stay healthy, Matthew Stafford. And I feel like, poor guy.
Yeah.
Well,
thanks for jinxing everybody with the Bake Burger Dynasty League. You got Kupp, you got Taylor on there.
That's what I was going to say. Like, I should probably go ahead and read the rest of the Baked Burger Dynasty League roster that I drafted, so everybody knows who's going to get hurt from this point forward. Because that was my second and my third round pick. But I think
Kelsey?
What's that?
Kelsey?
Kelsey in round 4, Fields in round 1. I've got Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, Jahan Dotson, Damian Pierce. Like, trade those guys. No, but in all honesty, like, just put Kupp on Pup for a month anyways. I can win without those two for now.
Kupp on Pup. I think that was in Fox and Sox. If I recall. Oh no,
and he can't go on Pup now anyway. It's too late.
IR.
Gotta go on IR.
All right, so Jeff Wilson is on IR, as we talked about at the very end of our Thursday morning show. But it seems like it could be a long absence here. Injuries to his midsection and his fingers. And whenever your coach is saying, and Mike McDaniel saying, we're optimistic about him coming back this season, it obviously tells you it's not looking like a 4-week injury here. I mean,
I think his agent, though, came out tonight and said something different. Said that they were hoping that he would be back after the minimum stay.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. I just today we had our Superflex draft, and I took Raheem Mostert ahead of AJ Dillon. So did I reach, Heath? Did I go Gadget Arms reach for Raheem Mostert?
Well, was Jalen Warren off the board already?
I think so.
I mean, I think that's really like once he's gone, then you can start looking for the other deep sleepers. I would say that is round 9-10 range is a good place for Raheem Mostert.
I love when I'm not the only one. No, I don't think he reached. I think that's the right spot for him.
AJ Dillon really fell. So it was Raheem Mostert, AJ Dillon, and then Chris took Devon Achane in that same round. Rashawn Johnson was still on the board. Tank Bigsby was still on the board. So look, man, Mostert's a starter right now. He's got to be. Look, they could sign someone, but Mostert was really good. Well, I shouldn't say that because sometimes the fantasy points weren't that good, but he was really involved. What did I say? 16 or more touches, 15 or more touches in 5 straight games before they acquired Jeff Wilson. And then I forgot about that Buffalo game late in the year. He was great, right? Didn't he have a great game? So it's appealing. All right. Any thoughts, Heath? We talked about it on the show earlier. You want to say your thoughts on Mostert?
I think he's a round 9, round 10 pick, a good option if you've gone 0 RB and you want to have a couple of guys you can start week 1 and then stack the Zach Charbonnet, Jalen Warren, like those kind of guys that you can't start quite yet. He fits really well into that type of build. He's not someone that you should draft and think you're going to be able to start him for 2 or 3 months. It's probably not going to last that long.
They got the Chargers in week 1, and the Chargers are they have been for 2 straight years now, I believe, just absolutely terrible against the run. They're gonna need to do a lot to improve there, so that could be a really good start of the week, Jamie.
Doubt it, but he's going to be in the starting or sleeping section.
All right, TJ Hawkinson signed a 4-year extension worth at least $66 million with $42.5 million guaranteed. Is he tight end 4 for anyone on this show? Is he
tight end 4?
Yeah.
Yes, he's tight end 4 for me.
Tight end 3. Is he tight end 3 for anyone on this show?
I think he's tight end 3 for me.
Okay.
I think he's tight end 3 for most people.
Yeah.
Right, but not for you, Jamie. And is he for Dave?
I would think so. Dave and Heath both have Waller as bust, so I can't imagine anybody's higher than him.
Okay. That's a stupid question then. There are no stupid questions, just stupid people, I've been told many times. Elijah Mitchell returned to practice after missing time with an adductor strain. Was there a report or just a speculation today about Christian McCaffrey not having the same workload?
I didn't see anything, so.
I saw speculation. I did not see a report.
I think it was an ESPN, just like something that could happen, surprising thing that could happen on every.
I think what it was that he would not have the same workload that he had in Carolina, and he did. I don't think he had that work at the end of last year, so that shouldn't be a surprise.
Sure. Cincinnati has a good plan in place to get Joe Burrow ready for week 1, according to their offensive coordinator, Brian Callahan.
I moved him back up ahead of Herbert because he came back to practice.
Okay. Saints running back Kendry Miller has another injury. This one's a hamstring injury. Yeah.
After we did our sleeper show today.
Yeah, is he off your sleepers list?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Washington defensive end Chase Young is still out with a stinger. New England. By the way, I haven't really talked about DSTs, but if you are one that just streams DSTs, Washington does have Arizona in week 1. I'm always looking for them. It seems like they've been taken pretty early in recent drafts.
Jacksonville also a good one.
Yeah. They have the Houston Texans, is it?
Indy.
Oh, they have Indy. That's right. New England wide receiver Tyquan Thornton is on IR. He'll miss at least 4 games. What are your thoughts on the Patriots wide receivers? We don't talk about them much. And that's kind of the topic of today's show is players we don't talk about much.
There's a reason.
I don't mind Juju as a 4th receiver. You know, I think from what everything I saw in the initial part of training camp, we didn't really see it in any preseason action, but that's just the guy Mac Jones was looking for all the time. 7-on-7, 11-on-11, whatever they were doing in practice. Joint practice sessions, he was looking for him. And I'll say this, the Bailey Zappi news makes me a little bit more encouraged about the Patriots passing game. Not that I think it's going to be spectacular, but that they're confident in Mac Jones because there was talk about maybe Bailey Zappi being the starter, you know, so that they feel comfortable enough with Mac Jones. Not that he's going to be a world beater by any stretch, but can he get the job done for the guys that matter? So Devontae Parker's free. You know, I would not be surprised if after week 1, week 2, he has a 5 for 70 type of game. He had some good moments last year. He just battled some injuries that were sitting here on a Tuesday saying Devontae Parker with one of your last round waiver ads, especially if you're a Cooper Kupp manager, place him on IR. But Juju is somebody that I've taken as a 4th receiver, and I'm not, I'm not worried about that.
I do kind of wonder if and they've both had so many injuries. Like, I don't know how many weeks not playing on the same team that Juju and Devontae Parker have both been 100% healthy. But I do wonder if those two cannibalize each other a little bit. And if one of them goes down, then the other one actually becomes a reliable option.
And we also saw the preseason Kendrick Bourne making a lot of plays for them. Gesicki's been banged up. I think he said he was a little unsure about his week 1 status too. So they have a lot of interesting parts. There's nobody that I think you're saying really the only Patriot you should be saying I'm starting is Ramondre Stevenson. But, outside of looking at the receiving core, there's going to be some guys I think that will be on and off a lot of fantasy rosters. You might even drop Juju at some point, but you could see some strong games for him too.
Tennessee wide receiver Kyle Phillips is on IR. Detroit edge rusher Julian Okwara is on IR. And Joe Montana said that Dan Marino is the best quarterback ever. How about that?
I was on a South Florida podcast this morning, and Jonathan Zaslow, I think you guys know him in some capacity.
Yeah.
So he was asking me about that, and obviously I got a chance to watch Marino my most of my life, and covered him the end of his career. I covered him his last season when I was at my first job at the Boca Raton News. It's hard to argue that there's a lot of guys that have thrown the ball better than him. It's just unfortunate, he never got the Super Bowl. And the thing I brought up was, when he got to that 84 Super Bowl, I was too young to remember this, but most people thought, oh, he's going to 10. That was that season that he had, 5,000 yards and 40 some odd touchdowns, whatever it was just ridiculous. And there's a Twitter handle, I think it's dolphinstalk.com, if I'm not mistaken. They post Dan's daily throw or something like that. It just gives me goosebumps every time I see it.
I want to see
really
the
cool.
X handle. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because like Montana and Marino were largely the same time, and Montana won and Marino was better. Like, there's a lot more highlights of Marino throws, rightly so, than Montana. But I don't know how you make the argument that Marino is the GOAT over Brady.
Yeah, I don't like the thing that I'll always say is he's never going to go down as the best because of the Super Bowls, and obviously Brady's just been ridiculous. But if you're just talking about players to play that position, it's hard to argue there's a lot of people better than him, and it was a joy to watch him play the game, and like I wish I was older to appreciate it, because just being a kid, you lived and died with it at that age for me when I was still a fan. But he ran into a lot of great Buffalo teams at the prime of his career, and then he had the Achilles injury. But my gosh, I could talk about him all day.
Yeah, so can this Twitter account. My goodness. Well, actually,
they get it right. Is Dolphins Talk?
I don't know, but I am on dolphinstalk.com's Twitter account, and they post too much. I'm sorry. There's just way too much stuff here. I haven't seen one Dan Marino thing. There's like Dan Marino bobblehead or something like that. All right, we're gonna take a break here. When we come back, let's see what we have for you. We have a lot of stuff here. We have the email of the day, and we have the offense-o-meter and players we don't talk about a lot, and then your tweets, your X's, right after this. Time for the email of the day. Our email address is fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. And if you want more emails, wait for our mailbag show. That one's going to be fun. This one is from Trevor. I think I'm hearing wrong every time he comes up. J.K. Dobbins. CBS has the earliest ADP on Dobbins, and your guys love him there. The other experts have him as an avoid at their later ADPs. On top of the injury history, he's never had more than 17 touches in a game. The offense is moving to more passing, and he's not really a pass catcher. They added Melvin Gordon to the already crowded running back room. Oh, Jamie's going to crush you for that Melvin Gordon. He's not going to be impressed with that one. So what's the thought process here? What are you guys seeing that everyone else is missing on J.K. Dobbins? And real quick, before you answer, Jamie, I cannot speak to the accuracy that every other fantasy analyst doesn't like J.K. Dobbins. That doesn't really sound right to me, but maybe the people that Trevor listened to don't like Dobbins as much as you do. So go ahead. You can defend it.
I listen. Everything that he said, aside from the Melvin Gordon, is not inaccurate. He hasn't had that type of season or that type of performance yet. But the hope is that with the offense trending in a more pass-happy direction, that he will be involved in that. And I think it's unfair to say that he can't do it because he did it at Ohio State. And so we just haven't seen it in the NFL yet. There's a reason why his touches have been capped. His rookie season, he was being sort of handled a little bit with kid gloves, and we started to see him get unleashed toward the end of that. His second season, he missed. And his third season, he was coming back from the ACL tear, and they were trying to, I think, manage his touches there until he got fully healthy. Melvin Gordon is not on the active roster, so you don't have to worry about him. So it's really just Gus Edwards and Justice Hill, the same guys that have been there. Obviously, Lamar Jackson is going to, take his share of carries as well. But this is why we do what we do. We project guys to have breakout seasons and breakout campaigns. And I think that's going to happen for him this year. So do I target him a little bit aggressively? Yes, because I'm excited about the season I'm expecting him to have. Did I take him in another draft again today? Yeah, I did.
You did.
It just gets to a point where it falls to a point where, okay, he's my best player on the board. I'm not going to pass him up because I am expecting him to have that year. Am I going to look silly when it doesn't? Sure. I'm going to lose a lot of fantasy games, a lot of fantasy leagues potentially, because in a few cases when I go heavy on receiver, that's my number one running back. But I'm confident that if he stays healthy year 2 after an ACL in this offense, that I think is going to be very productive. I think he's going to have his best season, and not by a small margin, by a significant margin.
Heath, I don't know where you actually are on Dobbins.
Agnostic. I don't know that I have a strong take. I've got him at pick 50 around RB20 in full PPR. So that might be slightly ahead of where the average is. And I wonder if, because it was just like a week or two ago that you looked at CBS ADP and it was all mixed in. The standard CBS ADP is non-PPR. Well, he's a top 12 running back in non-PPR. The only real question for me, it doesn't have anything to do with Dobbins' talent. I think he's an extreme, or at least was before the injury, an extremely talented rusher. I don't think he has problems catching the ball. I don't know if Lamar will check down enough. And that's going to be a really interesting thing, is how many times when Lamar's in trouble, does he just take off? Or have they kind of worked the check down into the game a little bit and it goes to Dobbins? If that happens, then I think Dobbins could have a top 12 PPR season too.
And I'm not expecting 50 catches.
Right.
He doesn't have to do that to be in the range where you're drafting him, or even where the range I'm expecting him to go. I think you're looking at, what we've been hoping for Derrick Henry the last couple of seasons, 35 to 40 catches. If he does that and then runs the way he's capable of running, this is a guy that can average 6 yards per carry. He's done that. His stretch at the end of the season, I forget the amount of games, but he was 6.7 yards per carry. So he's explosive. The offense will be better. They should score more if everybody stays healthy there, which is a big ask. I mean, Lamar Jackson's missed a lot of time in the last 2 years, but I think this is going to be the year where he just sort of takes that step forward. So it's up to you if you want to buy it or not. I get it. And I think where Heath hasn't ranked is we're probably more appropriate to the risk that you have to bake into what has happened to him. So I get that. Again, I'm just being aggressive with the player that I like.
Yeah, not that aggressive though. I mean, 48. The last time we did a draft together, other than Superflex, you took him 48th, or maybe I think you took him 49th. Maybe Jonte Johnson, J.K. Dobbins, I believe, at the turn.
You're talking about the pick by pick. I did.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, and then his ADP on CBS is something like 55. His ADP on Fantasy Pros for J.K. Dobbins is like 63. So it's about a round. It's nothing crazy. And also, the good thing about having a player that you love and you take all the time, if you take him after in round 5, you're not going to lose a lot of leagues if he doesn't hit. I mean, right? Like for me last year, it was probably Cortland Sutton, and that.
Listen, we all know what a big disaster DJ Moore was for me last year. I won 2 or 3 leagues where I took DJ Moore in round 3.
Okay,
you don't lose your league because of a bad round 3 pick,
right? But you certainly don't do it because of a bad round 5 pick. So.
I'll say this. I have one league. There's only one league where I've drafted where I have real concerns, and it's because I went Jefferson, Mahomes, Olave, Dobbins, and Christian Watson, and then my second running back is Kamara. Yeah. So those are eventually my starting running backs. And so if Dobbins goes down there, I could be in trouble. And that's the one league that stands out to me. I probably should have had a little bit more, little better drafting of running backs there.
All right. Time for something called the offense-o-meter. If Kansas City is
I did get Jalen Warren.
Hey, nice. If Kansas City is a 10, where are these offenses on the offense-o-meter from 0 to 10? Jacksonville.
Oh, Heath would have loved Pete's take last night.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just really enjoying, I like it when everybody else gets to be a little bit of a homer too. And Pete is all the way in on Jacksonville.
Yeah, he said their offense will be up there close to the Chiefs. So he'd probably give them a 9 on this.
Well, you sort of steered him into that though.
Why? I asked.
He said they're going to be one of the better offenses. You said the Chiefs, and he just said up there.
I have,
but he picked them to win the 1 seed, right?
He picked them to go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
His Super Bowl matchup is San Fran Jacksonville. But you know what though, they're now I don't say they are, but the driver's seat to get the 1 seed. It's hard to say it's the AFC West and the AFC East, and even the AFC North. They're so.
Please, let's not do this to the Chiefs again. Let's not do this to the Chiefs again. That was
no. I'm just saying, like, if the Chargers stay healthy, they're going to be a threat, and the Chiefs have a tougher schedule than Jacksonville does. If Jacksonville takes that step, like they're capable of, they should obliterate the division, and they're playing the NFC South.
Yeah, it's true. Where are they on the offensive meter?
What's the rating?
0 to 10. 10 is the Chiefs. 0 is the, I don't know.
I would say 7.5, 8.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, and this is the part that I haven't heard Pete talk about, and maybe he just has a different opinion than all the rating services and PFF and everybody. I think if you're talking fantasy players or skill position players, they might be an 8 or a 9. But everything that I see has Jacksonville in the bottom 5 in terms of offensive line. And most places have them just barely ahead of Tennessee as the second worst offensive line. And that counts for real football, as Pete would say, not the fantasy game. So I'll say a 7.
Okay.
You would have absolutely enjoyed Pete and Adam talking Anthony Richardson last night.
Oh, I didn't miss a lot of that. Like I probably watched 30 minutes of the Pete portion of the draftathon, and it was fantastic. I really loved that Nando was just relentless on the absolute stone cold fact that Adam had never played that game before in his Immaculate Grid. No idea. I'd never been to, like, and I love the way that Adam like acted like he definitely did. And by the time we got 10 minutes in, I played once. I played once.
I played football once, but I played the baseball version of it before too. But told me they gave me kind of confusing directions, unfortunately, because all right, forget it. Anyway, I go through this here because I basically what I want to know is how much faith you have. Sometimes you stumble into great fantasy production because an offense is a lot better than you thought. I think about the Seahawks last year as that team. So I want to know the faith you have in these offenses. Jacksonville, let's say they're a 7 or an 8. Seattle, again, let's do Seattle.
8.5.
If I'm giving Jacksonville, I'll give Jacksonville an 8. I give Seattle 7.
Jets.
6.5.
5.
Lions.
7.
7.
Ravens.
8.
8.
Giants are a 10. Okay, Steelers. Now Giants.
3.
Oh, 3. Come on.
They're terrible. What are you talking about?
Let's make a bet. Let's do something. Let's make a bet. All right, where do you think they're going to finish in total points per game?
Somewhere below 16.
And that's a 3? No, you got to be a little more specific if you're giving them
16 would be a 5, so it's a 4 or a 3.
All right, so are you saying they're a bottom 10 team? That's kind of what you're saying. I'll take top 16 for the Giants.
I'll take bottom 12, and anything in the middle is a tie.
I'll take top 12, and you take bottom 12. Is that what you're saying? Or
yeah.
Okay, fine. I don't think they're necessarily going to be top 12, but okay.
What metric?
What was your
or yards or offensive points per game?
Yeah, offensive points.
Yeah. I'm not counting. I'm not Winks points don't count.
Fair. Jamie, what was your number for the Giants?
6.5.
Why are the Giants even on this list? Like we talked about all these exciting offenses. You throw the Giants on there.
Who the next head coach is going to be? The next head coach is going to be Mike Kafka, the Giants offensive coordinator. He is fantastic.
Who's the Giants' next head coach going to be?
It's going to be Brian Dable. And you watch, they're going to run things. Steelers.
5 with a chance to be a 7.
Yeah, 5.
Falcons.
Oof. 4.
5.
Packers.
4.
4.
Bears.
3.
6.
Browns.
5.
4.
All right. Players we don't talk about enough. Dallas Goedert. We don't talk enough about Dallas Goedert. Last year, he was the number 5 tight end per game in PPR, number 6 per game in non-PPR. That was with only 3 touchdowns in 12 games. He was on pace for just under 1,000 yards and 78 catches on 98 targets, and he has basically been the most efficient tight end in the NFL. It's either him or Kittle, basically. Over the last 3 seasons, Goddard has ranked 8th, 1st in percentage of catches that gain 16 or more yards among tight ends with 50 or more targets, and he's been number 1 in yards per target among tight ends 2 straight seasons. Heath, we don't talk enough about Dallas Goedert. Where is he in your tight end rankings? Give me upside and downside.
Yeah, I'm more of the upside guy, so somebody else might give the downside. This is somebody, and I think we all have these guys. Adam, for you, it seems to be Jaylen Warren, that we get to the last week of draft season and it's like, I don't have enough of that guy. And so you just start drafting him. Whether it's time to draft him in the rankings or not, you just start drafting him. And that's where I've been with Dallas Goedert because of what you said. Like he was the top 5, top 6 tight end with pretty rotten touchdown luck. And I know he hasn't had a big touchdown season for counting stats, but on a per target basis, he's been much better than he was last year. And that all happened without any injuries to AJ Brown or Devontae Smith. So I think Goddard is a very solid top 6 or 7 tight end for the year. And if AJ Brown or Devontae Smith suffer an injury, he's got tight end 2 upside.
Do you guys like him significantly better than Kittle?
I feel like in my mind I do, but I don't have it ranked that way. It's because I agree with everything he said. It feels as if, like, to me, there's 4 guys to whatever degree you want to draft them, look at them. It's Kelsey, Andrews, Waller, and Hawkinson for me. And then there's the guy in the middle, which is Pitts, which can go either way. He could be top 3 or he could be bottom 15. It's like one of those. He's got so many variances of outcomes. Then right after Pitts, it's like, okay, Goddard to me always, every time I think of him, I just think safe. And it's probably not fair to think about him in terms of the same upside because, like he said, 1 injury away, he could be great. We saw last season in the Super Bowl, Eagles and Chiefs in a back and forth game. Goddard was a superstar, and so when you think about the run game for Philly, if it's stagnant and they're in a little bit more third and long, third and not necessarily manageable, then maybe we're seeing Goddard as just that the targets ramp up a little bit, the production ramps up a little bit, and then if he gets some more touchdown love, then he really can be a superstar. So I always love when I draft Dallas Goedert. Like I was looking at our magazine league, which we drafted in July, I think it was. And
might have been June. Was it July?
It might have been June. And so at that point, there was no DeAndre Hopkins. So I was like, oh wow, let me see what my team looked like. And I was like, oh, I drafted Traylon Burks like round 6. At that point. So my 3 receivers in that league are Calvin Ridley, Drake London, and Traylon Burks. I'm like, man, I just, I wish I had a better third receiver. Nico Collins is my 4th, so I'll be okay. But I was like, oh, I got Dallas Goedert. I'm pretty okay. Like it's just, he's just okay. He's easy going.
Okay. Okay. That covers Dallas Goedert. Let's go to Mike Williams. Don't feel like we talk about him enough. And I want to say last year, he was wide receiver 22 per game, but he played 2 partial games. Those games were 9% and 37% of the snaps. Remove those, and he would have been more like wide receiver 15 per game, certainly in the top 20. And then the year before that, I think he was right around that, actually. I think it might have been like closer to 12 per game. So I don't know about you. I got a little more optimistic about Williams with the recent revelation, the recent report that Quentin Johnston is their 4th wide receiver. I just don't think Quentin Johnston is really doing that much, and it's going to take much away from Mike Williams. So I'm starting to think we might be, I don't know, that maybe the fantasy community is a little too low on him, almost in a Tyler Lockett-y way. Your thoughts?
I feel the same about both those guys, to be honest with you. I think Lockett gets undervalued a little bit, and Williams the same thing. It's hard to rank them significantly higher. Like to me, they're top 30 receivers. So you've heard me say this a lot. Once you get to like wide receiver 18 through like almost wide receiver 35, 36, like there feels like there could just be a big swing of outcomes for all those guys, but you should feel comfortable. For the most part, you're hoping to get those as your number 3 receivers. But there is the fear of last year he was banged up, had a back injury, had an ankle injury. that Quentin Johnston, if he gets on a little bit of a roll, could be a problem. Keenan Allen's still there, going to dominate targets. Austin Eckler's still there. There's still a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot. There's still some buzz for Gerald Everett. So there's a lot of mouths to feed. And as good as Justin Herbert is and Kellen Moore's offense, and if they're still going to throw the ball top 3, he should be successful. But how much of it is going to get chopped up, and you're just going to have those big swings from Mike Williams? So I think he's just a high-end number 3 receiver that you'd love to have starting for you in a 3-receiver league and a potential flex in a 2-receiver in a flex league. So it's not bad to have him on your roster. And I don't think, round 5 is even too soon to draft him.
I think Lockett's a good name to associate him with, and also Mike Evans, like some guys in that wide receiver 3 range that are going to win you some weeks. The types of guys I generally like to roster, and I may have downgraded him a little bit too much because of the Quentin Johnston. I don't like the fact though that, because I think, like, I even heard some talk last night on the draftathon about how it's going to be Quentin Johnston or it's going to be Mike Williams. And everybody acts like because they're going to throw the ball downfield more, it's not going to be Keenan Allen. And most of the reports that I've heard out of training camp is that Keenan Allen is just doing all kinds of new things, and Justin Herbert can't stop throwing him the ball. Right. So I'm a little concerned that people are favoring the downfield receivers a little bit, and it's actually going to be Keenan Allen just playing more downfield because he's a superstar and he can play wherever. And then also Williams isn't technically old yet, but he's kind of old.
Do you guys like Williams or Lockett better?
Lockett slightly.
Yeah, I've got Lockett, like Lockett, Godwin, Evans, Williams are all right in the same range.
You think JSN at this point, even though he's hurt, is a bigger threat for the season than Johnson?
For sure. Yes, right. For sure. Yes. Way more.
So you know what? Like, this is the philosophical thing here, but I'm assuming you guys like Chris Godwin better than Mike Williams?
Barely.
Yes.
Philosophically, my research and my wide receiver theory is wide receivers on good offenses are the ones that you should target when it's close. I'm not saying you target Jalen Waddle over Cooper Kupp if Kupp were not injured or something. I'm just saying if it's close, it's a tiebreaker. Based on that, Mike Williams is someone you should take over Chris Godwin if you think it's close. I don't know if I have the stones to do that in PPR because they're such different players in terms of a profile. You can figure a lot more catches for Godwin. But just think about the season that Justin Herbert could have. He could throw for 5,000 yards. That could be that could be great for both Williams.
You don't think Baker Mayfield could throw the 5? Why didn't we put Tampa Bay on the offensometer?
Because that would be offensive. Would not do that. Aaron Jones. Did we talk enough about Aaron Jones? I was on the fence on that one. I don't think we do.
No. He kind of gets overlooked in the Dameon Pierce, J.K. Dobbins, Alexander Madison range for sure.
Exactly. Is he ahead of that group?
Not for me. He's in the middle. So I would take the potential of Pierce and Dobbins over Jones, but that's probably me just being more fascinated with those two guys than I am with Aaron Jones.
I have Jones ahead of that group, and I've even downgraded him a little bit because of age, but it's tough. And I mean, I'm a guy who kind of leans on what teams and coordinators have done, especially when the situations remain a little bit similar. It's a quarterback change, so that's different, but it's just so hard to get away from the way they've used Aaron Jones in the passing game.
We don't talk a lot about Jordan Addison. Certainly, I would say not since his injury. That's probably my fault. Where do you guys see yourself on Jordan Addison, who should be ready for week 1, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm sorry. He had what? Did he just have a concussion?
Concussion.
Okay. All right. So I'm sorry. So nothing serious there. Well, I don't mean it in that sense. Nothing long-term there. Yeah. Let's talk about Jordan Addison. Is he behind Lockett, Mike Williams? And, your thoughts, guys.
He is for me, but not far.
I've got him right in the middle of that group. Like those 4 wide receivers I said, the one I didn't say who's in that group is Jordan Addison, and he's right in the middle of it. I think it's going to be really interesting. Like, obviously they value TJ Hawkinson a lot more than I do. And they got Justin Jefferson. So if they throw it 700 times, then that's probably okay to just have a 3-headed monster of really concentrated target share. But KJ Osborne at the beginning of the year, at least, is going to be involved as well. I just think Addison's so good at running routes. If he gets in single coverage with everything they're putting towards Jefferson, he could catch a lot of passes this year.
I didn't think that I put Daniel Jones on the players we don't talk about enough. I honestly feel I don't know how you guys like. We have a tweet that I was going to read a little bit later that said something. Can we get some Daniel Jones and or Giants chatter? Never hear about those guys. And I wasn't sure if that was sarcastic because I feel
You weren't sure if that was sarcastic.
intentionally not spoken about them so as not to be labeled a homer on the show.
There is
Oh,
one
man.
giant, and Jamie, I think you've probably heard this too. I think we both heard it. There is one giant we've not talked enough about. It's Saquon Barkley.
That is true.
Maybe.
It's not Daniel Jones, though. Like, just like the Giants brass, Adam thinks Daniel Jones is more important than Saquon Barkley, but he's not.
You want to talk about Saquon Barkley? We can talk about Saquon Barkley.
I think everybody knows enough about Saquon Barkley.
Okay, fine. I don't think we talk enough about Kirk Cousins. Does Kirk Cousins have more upside, or is he just going to be kind of a low-end QB1?
The thing that was so frustrating about him last year was that they threw the ball so much, and he did not have the type of season that you hope for. Touchdowns were certainly a problem for him. But he has been to the previous 3 years at 22 points or more. Never above 25, though. So I think you just kind of know what you're getting. So for me, and obviously ADP does not reflect this because Kirk Cousins is still being drafted as a top 12 guy. But for me, I put him in the Dak, Geno, Daniel Jones category. And really, Daniel Jones doesn't belong there because he doesn't do what those other guys do, or at least projects to do what those other guys do, which is going to be throw the ball a little bit more on some more prolific passing attacks. But look, Cousins is the ultimate fallback guy for me. So draft Richardson, look for Cousins. Draft Tua, look for Cousins. I did that in our salary cap league. Those are my two quarterbacks, Tua and Cousins, and I'm thrilled about that. So if you don't, love your starter and Cousins is still on the board, pair them up and you should be in good spot.
I think like when you're talking about their upside as far as how high they could finish in fantasy, it's the same thing for both Cousins and Geno Smith. Is this going to be like last year or the 2 years before? Because if there's not that many quarterbacks scoring more than 22 fantasy points per game, then I think Cousins or Geno could approach a top 5 season. But I don't think they could actually get into the 25 range. So like I could see Cousins having a 700 attempt, 4,800 yard, 35 pass touchdown season. But it's just going to depend on, does Herbert bounce back? Does Lamar bounce back? How many of these guys get hurt? Does Lawrence? I think it's interesting, the huge gap between Lawrence and Cousins and Geno, because there's an argument to be made that those guys could put up pretty similar stats. It's just that Lawrence is younger. And so you hope he makes that monster leap.
All right. Let's see if we can get does Adam talk too much about Daniel Jones poll going here and see what the results are.
Should be we, not Adam. We.
All right, fine. Do we talk too much about Daniel Jones? I appreciate, because it's probably more Heath. Heath talks more about Daniel Jones than I do. Let's take a break here. We got your X's when we come back. Anybody call it X, or are we still saying Twitter?
I still say Twitter.
Yeah, every time you say X, I just kind of think you're a little bit more of a boomer.
I hate it. I say it sarcastically. It's ridiculous. All right, here are your tweets from Henry. Common phrase is you can't win your league in the first round, but you can lose your league in the first round. Who are the first round picks based on ADP that you think have the highest probability of losing people their leagues based on underperformance?
Based on underperformance?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to say because I don't expect them to underperform, but I mean, without an injury. So, underperform, like we can nitpick a lot of these situations. You brought up one already. Does McCaffrey lose enough work that, oh my God, he's the 8th running back as opposed to the 1st, and he's not a top 12 player. Eckler's touchdowns and receptions come down because of just a more explosive offense. I'm trying to think of non-injury related situation.
There's Chubb and Brown.
It's not a player perform. Like, I think the only way without an injury is because we were wrong about their projected usage. I don't think none of these guys that we're taking in round 1 we think could just be bad. But is it possible Pollard doesn't get the volume boost we expect?
Right. I was going to say Pollard is the one you could see from hasn't done it before. CeeDee Lamb, more crowded receiving core, his numbers dip a little bit.
Bijan.
now there's also the receivers that have quarterback injuries potential, so they're not hurt, but God forbid one of the star quarterbacks go down, and what happens to Kelsey? What happens to Tyreek Hill? What happens to Stephon Diggs? All those guys that are going in round one.
Adam, we had our Giants talk. Can we have our Chiefs talk for just a second? Because I've seen this comment or tweet multiple times. And as people say, the problem with Sky Moore is that the highest a Chiefs receiver has finished other than Tyreek was wide receiver 33. That's in this Patrick Mahomes era. Well, every year but one, Tyreek and Travis Kelce were both there.
And you've pointed this out. Juju was a must-start receiver. He had emerged into that before his concussion.
Right.
By the way, I think the answer to this question is Nick Chubb, because in full PPR, Nick Chubb is a first-round pick. In CBS ADP, he's at 12-13. In Fantasy Pros ADP, in full PPR, he's 13th, and he's got the 11th highest ADP. So it's just possible that he's just never been that. He's never been worth that. Now, he could be better than ever before.
It's a good call.
I don't think Chubb has ever finished higher than RB8 per game in full PPR. Evan Hicks, a league member hasn't paid and won't be able to before the draft, but they gave a specific date that they can pay you. Do you let them still draft?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously a friendship discussion, right? Like, you're not probably doing that for strangers. When you say hasn't paid, you don't mean for last year.
Ooh. That that's a problem.
Because in our leagues, like, hasn't paid yet is kind of the default.
Yeah.
I'm going to be more strict this year.
Yeah, no, you guys, but Bake Burger, you're not setting your lineup week one if you haven't paid. And already more than half the league is paid.
Good thing you owe me a lot of money.
I owe you nothing. This is from Vince.
I guess all the leagues I run are free for you.
Love the charity work. Speaking of charity work, Vince, Jamie, let's see the side of your head.
Oh yeah.
You got the 3 lines shaved to the side.
On both sides.
That is fantastic.
It looks pretty good. It looks really good. All right. Anyway, Vince says, can you dig into the rookie tight ends and why people seem to love them more than usual this year?
Well, I think first off, their profiles coming into the league. We're getting to a point where colleges are using these guys not just as combo tight ends, so they're being used more as pass catchers, and big slot receivers. And so Kincaid and Laporta, for example, and even Musgrave, they landed in such great spots, where there's target opportunities and immediate playing time. They don't have to worry about necessarily being blockers, which is why these guys don't typically get on the field. So I think for those 3 in particular, and we'll see if Mayer falls in line too. But Kincaid, whenever you see a team be aggressive in the draft and the Bills traded up 2 spots to go get him, that speaks to, okay, we're going to use him right away. And by all accounts, he's handled everything that they've thrown at him. I think he's worth the risk because he's attached to Josh Allen, and they didn't really make any significant moves this offseason in the receiving core. And then for Laporta, I mean, look at that receiving core behind Amon-Ra St. Brown. So both those guys to me have significant upside, and they're worth taking a chance on as your number 1 tight end.
I mean, honestly, it's desperation. Like, have you seen the tight end position? We had like 8 guys who scored more than 9 fantasy points per game last year. We're just dying for someone to matter. And it's more fun to take a shot on those guys who haven't failed us over and over than it is on Tyler Higbee and Dalton Schultz and others.
Okay, here's a good question. Heath, I don't know if you're going to write this story this year, but from Reed, how to take advantage of different platforms' draft rankings. Who does Yahoo, ESPN, Sleeper have listed too high or too low?
I believe that Chris Towers is writing that story.
He wrote
it. It's already out there. And so go search Chris Towers CBS. That's the great thing is if we ever say that we wrote something and you can't find it, just search our name and CBS and you'll find our writer page and you'll see everything we've written. So go search that. Chris has it.
I'm looking
and I think, to this point, the people who listen to our show are, being brainwashed about the players that we like. And then they go play on other sites and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I found this guy. Like I did a Yahoo draft and Roshan Johnson was like buried and he's one of my favorite draft targets. And so I was like, I got to keep scrolling. Okay, there he is. You're going to find that on our site too. There are going to be people that you listen to and you play on CBS and, you're listening to, a Yahoo show or an ESPN show or, NFL Network show. And they hype up the guys that they like, and they're buried on our site. We were getting crushed a little bit initially for the way our average draft position looked by a couple of other sites, and understandably so. It just hadn't registered enough drafts yet, and we had put it out there, I think, a little too soon for my liking. Published it a little too soon. So anytime you have players that you like and you play on other platforms, then take advantage of it. That's the beauty of this industry, is that there are a lot of different opinions. I'm going to be, I hope not, but wrong on players. Heath, same thing, but we're going to be right on a lot of guys as well. And if you get that type of advantage, the thing about the Dobbins email we got, if you're playing on a platform that everybody is railing against them, well, their projections and their rankings are probably going to push them down. Well, if you feel like I feel, you get them even a better discount.
Yes, he was one of the guys I was going to highlight. I'm looking at just 2 players on ESPN that are much lower than where in their ADP than where they are in CBS ADP. Drake London is 84th. J.K. Dobbins is 87th in ADP. All right, guys, let's go rapid fire here. Rapid fire, because I do want to give a few Superflex tips. We did a Superflex draft today. This one is from Jeff. Does Joe Mixon have a path to being a top 5 running back this season?
Yes.
Yes.
From one fishy scientist, which Chiefs wide receiver will have the most fantasy value?
Sky Moore.
From Jeremy, best ball strategies. Reach for quarterbacks to make a stack. Avoid certain players. Best ball strategies.
Make a stack if it comes naturally.
Yeah, I wonder if this is the year that stacking's gone so mainstream that the team that wins, it's going to be a team that didn't build the stack.
From William, any worry on guys like Olave and Devontae Smith? Olave is giving me some Cortland Sutton vibes.
Well, Cortland Sutton's second year was his best ever, so hopefully that's the case. Look,
concerns about those 2 guys?
Slight, just because it's Derek Carr, and Michael Thomas may stay healthy all season, and Juwan Johnson may do some things, and Alvin Kamara may do some things, so there's a lot of mouths to feed there. When we thought initially it was just going to be him and maybe some parts with Kamara suspended for a big season, but he looked awesome last year, and hopefully that's the type of player that he's going to be.
I have more concerns about Olave than I do Devontae Smith. I love Devontae at the 2-3 turn. I don't have a lot of concerns about Olave, but more than I do about Devontae.
From Bonehead, let's try to do this as rapid fire as possible. He wants a deep dive on Treylon Burks now that he's healthy. So where would you guys take Treylon Burks?
Round 10-ish, but still with a lot of optimism.
Yeah, I think I might have him at round 8. There's a lot of outs to be right on Treylon Burks. Like DeAndre Hopkins could not quite still be himself. Tennessee could throw more, and it could be like an A.J. Brown, Corey Davis season, or DeAndre Hopkins at 31 years old could get hurt. So round 8, 9.
Okay, and David wants to know what our in-season coverage on this podcast is like. Good question. Tuesday is waiver wire. Wednesday is trade talk and other buyer sell, all that kind of stuff. Thursday, starter sit for the AFC home games. Friday, starter sit for the NFC home games. Saturday, mailbag. Sunday morning, we have a 5-minute show where we give you injury updates. Sunday night, we recap the action. Monday, we recap it again, but with advanced stats called Beyond the Box Score. We have a little bit of a longer view, a longer look at some of the games and what went down. So we have 8 episodes per week, actually, and you're going to really enjoy it. It's really
FFT Dynasty.
Right, and FFT Dynasties. So is that going to be a Tuesday thing every
Tuesday thing? Yep.
Okay, great. All right, and then finally, Ultimate Warriors 1 wants some IDP talk, some linebackers. I said when we did our IDP draft, 2 sleepers for me are David Long for the Dolphins and Nakobe Dean for the Eagles. I've seen them pretty low on some linebacker rankings lists, but Dean steps in for Edwards, who was one of the best linebackers in IDP last year, and David Long is a guy that the Dolphins got him pretty cheap because he's always hurt. But a lot of analysts absolutely love that acquisition for the Dolphins. He came over from Tennessee, I believe. Anything else? Any IDPs that you guys like?
I know Jack Campbell went relatively late in our draft, and he's obviously going to play a big role for the Lions.
Oh, right. Azeez Al-Shire. I'm sorry. Azeez Al-Shire, absolute freaking stud with the 49ers. I think he's with Tennessee now. So just want to see him get on the field. Heath?
I'll just give the same piece of advice I always do. Like, go look for those edge rushers who play end/linebacker, who get the defensive line, and it's different on every site, but the guys who get the defensive line tag, but are kind of edge linebackers. Those are the guys you want to target.
We talked Superflex last week. We'll give you a little bit of an update here. What were your some of your major takeaways from the Superflex 12-team Superflex? So not everybody's guaranteed to get 3 quarterbacks. 12-team Superflex. Other than me taking Bijan Robinson 24th overall, which was ridiculous, Daniel Jones and Dak Prescott should not go ahead of Bijan Robinson in Superflex, even at 6 point. What were some of the things that really stood out to you in today's draft?
I had the 12th pick. I was so intent on not taking a quarterback in the first round, and then you guys let Trevor Lawrence fall to me at 12. So that was like, okay. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to lean into it, and I took 2 at 13. And so I was thrilled to get 3 quarterbacks in this league.
Timeout. You took Tua over Richardson, right?
And I made that switch in my rankings as well, yes.
Okay.
I think that one, though, is like, I think that one's understandable if you like Richardson better in a 1 quarterback league and Tua better in Superflex. There might be a little more risk for Richardson.
Yes. But I was thrilled to get 3 quarterbacks. Jordan loves my third. And the way that this draft, Heath, I think, said it in the chat that this is the most we've seen these quarterbacks get pushed up. And so I felt pretty comfortable taking 3 early. You know, I sacrificed a little bit at third receiver and maybe tight end, but I feel like I could cobble that together. Finding quarterbacks is going to be tough.
Yeah, it was. And there are still maybe a couple of potential starting quarterbacks this year who I'm not sure got drafted, but
we drafted a lot.
we did draft a lot. In past years, we've had a couple of those Desmond Ridder, Mac Jones, Jimmy Garoppolo types that fall to the double-digit rounds. And those guys were mostly gone by like round 7 this year. I think, and that kind of goes against the advice I've given, I think I gave a week ago, is that eventually after the top 13, 14, 15, however many quarterbacks the league actually likes, there will be a gap and people will stop taking quarterbacks. That gap didn't happen. Like 3 picks after I took Geno Smith, Kenny Pickett was gone. People just kept hammering quarterbacks. And so I kind of had to adjust on the fly because I had started off with Justin Jefferson and Stephon Diggs, thinking I took Geno in round 3. I thought everything was great. And then people just kept hammering quarterbacks. And so I had to kind of adjust on the fly there. But if that happens, it makes it more difficult to wait on quarterback regardless.
Well, if you think drafting 3 quarterbacks is good, why don't you do what I do? Draft 4 quarterbacks.
I drafted 4 quarterbacks, and I thought I got one of the sneakiest potential starters. You were talking trash about Anthony Richardson again and saying that Gardner Minshew would be starting week 5 or something.
Yeah.
And I was so happy to take Sam Darnold because, and this might be wild, but I think it's more likely that Brock Purdy gets benched because of performance than it is Anthony Richardson.
I just counted. There was 37 quarterbacks drafted. You mentioned Darnold. Mike White was drafted. Malik Willis was drafted.
Was Dobbs?
Dobbs was drafted. Clayton Tune was drafted. Trying to think, there was another backup.
But this is a strategy that I like because I didn't love my team. Like I wasn't getting after my first 3 picks, which were Mahomes. I had 1.1. Mahomes, Bijan, Lamb. I was thrilled.
Oh, Kyle Trask. I'm sorry, was another one.
After that, I didn't really feel like I got great value with a lot of picks. So I took 4 quarterbacks, and they are Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Purdy, and Baker Mayfield, who was the
So you were part of the problem.
No, because I took Mayfield super late. He was the 32nd quarterback taken.
Mayfield and Mac Jones sat on the board for a long time.
Yeah. Mac Jones went 1 pick before me. They were 31 and 32. I think those were the last starting quarterbacks. But taking 4 quarterbacks is great because the second there's a quarterback injury, you are going to get so much more value in trade for that quarterback compared to the running back, wide receivers, tight ends that were on the board when you took that quarterback.
I mean, you should never cheer for injury, but it's going to be a horse race to see if that first quarterback injury happens before Baker Mayfield loses his job.
Dude, he's not. I don't think he's going to lose his job. Like their offensive line is so bad, and Kyle Trask is a statue. He will get pummeled. Mayfield has some mobility, and he's probably better than Kyle Trask. But even a quarterback, even a marginal quarterback like Mayfield, or a bad fantasy quarterback like Mayfield, is going to have some value in a Superflex league where somebody's got quarterback injuries or bye weeks even. All right, that's it for tonight's show, and Did we talk too much? Do we talk too much about Daniel Jones? 162 votes. No, 41%. Yes, 32%. Just the right amount, 27%. I feel vindicated.
No C results?
No C results. And Schaefer says that Baker Mayfield can't move. I don't agree with that. I think he can move better than Trask.
I think he can move better than he can throw.
Well, I have Purdy and Mayfield, so I don't think you like my team very much. We'll talk to you with the mailbag. Mailbag coming up on Friday, airing on Saturday on Fantasy Football Today.